Hey guys, so a few years ago, I had gone live and I talked about, my dealings with North Bay Animal Services and kind of like what was going on with, the dogs that had been, taken and then returned to me. Um, and actually, for that whole situation and everything that I, shared publicly, I actually received like a lot of pushback and like criticism from the, you know, blind following North Bay Animal Service goons um, who really just, without an invitation, had, all these things to offer and say, and I was like, if you don't agree with what I'm saying because you haven't experienced that, then that's good. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. That wasn't, I wasn't, hoping to find people that, shared those experiences, because ultimately that would mean that that was just that many more animals that had suffered at the hands of the shelter. Um, so I got the dogs back, and it wasn't left. They weren't gonna just leave that alone, right? And I, in the last video that I did, when I was talking about this, I had said that, I had reached out to everybody. I reached out to the board of supervisors. I reached out to the governor. I reached out to, the California Medical Veterinary Board. Sorry. I reached out literally to everyone to get help with what was going on, because in my investigating them for my own animals, I came to learn about a lot of things that were just very troublesome. And instead of taking me seriously, the goons were just like completely shut it down. And, and I've been pretty much like black sheeped from, the animal welfare community, which I'm okay with, because I have always colored outside the lines. And to me, I just, that's just me. And I'm not going to, join a bandwagon that I don't agree with. Actually, I never am going to join a bandwagon. I will support a cause that I believe in, and I will fight for your, right to support causes that you believe in. But I will never jump on a bandwagon. That's just not my style. So, uh, finally, the result in that was that instead of focusing on their own shortcomings, North Animal Services continue to conspire with the town of Windsor, trying to collect evidence um, uh, for exactly what they were trying to prove. Other than me having more than 4 dogs is beyond me. I've never had a complaint. I've never about animal cruelty. I've never hurt an animal. I've never put an animal in a bad situation. Yes, I did have more than 5 animals that were in my home, because I am a 501c3 foster based rescue. And, you know, I did that. So let me back up a little bit. So when I was unable to get the help that I needed, when I started realizing that really there isn't any help for pet owners or pets, that all of these national organizations pretty much are all about covering up for shelters, I was like, you know what? I'm going to open up my own rescue. And that way I can be the change that I want to see. Um, and so I did. And, I actually went through I took the same route that North Bay Animal Services took. I went through LegalZoom. I paid the fee, and my filings were done, and I was granted 501c3 status. And I thought that that was pretty much, all that was needed. Um, because I didn't have a facility, so I didn't think I needed a kennel license, and apparently you do. The thing is that in the past, and this is coming from a source that used to work at the county shelter, who is also a lawyer in Sonoma County, who I'm very good friends with. She's an amazing person. Um, you know, she shared with me that in the past 50 years, the animal shelter has really like given like granted two kennel license. And oddly enough, after conducting research and digging into those to see exactly, it was Dogwood and I think Remap, which oddly enough, both founders are tied into the shelter. They're both on the board of directors for North Bay Animal Services, and the person of Dogwood actually was the animal control officer for the Sonoma County Animal Services. So if you ask me, that's a little bit, conflict of interest. It's a little bit playing favoritism. It's, I guess, smart in the sense of keeping the pool small, keeping the competition small, but that's the problem, is that it's not supposed to be competition. Rescues aren't supposed to be in competition with one another. It's not about, outdoing the other. It's about helping each other so that way ultimately we can help them, help the animals, right? I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what rescue is to me. Well, apparently not to the people in this county. And so, I was like, what, fine. Obviously, they have it, in their minds, taken care of, right, in this county. So if my services aren't needed here, then great. So I started reaching out to surrounding counties and helping with their overpopulation crisis. Fresno, Ukiah, LA, San Bernardino, Modesto, because they were, in desperate need of help. And when the shelters here learned of that, they did everything that they reached out to these shelters to feel, to speak poorly on us. We're like, oh, we're concerned for these animals and all kinds of crazy stuff. Pretty much everything that I had, said that they were doing or weren't doing, or, the things that were wrong with them, all of a sudden they're trying to project onto me, which is funny because, well, I'll get to that point in a minute. And so they ended up actually scaring some of these shelters away, which is, which is why we have filed a lawsuit for defamation of character. So recently there, because we didn't have any fosters coming in, and, I understand people hear things and they're like, apparently they're more quick to bite the bullet when it's about a smaller organization than when it's about a shelter. Forgetting that every organization, if it's legitimate and, true to its mission, started off small and then worked up. When something is just born and then automatically, huge, that's concerning because it shows like some sort of faultiness going on. And, but anyway, and so, the Sonoma County Animal Services had reached out to me and offered to help with some dogs because North Bay got into their head too. And they had us so that, and so trying to be cooperative and build a relationship with the shelters, I was like, okay, fine. If you can help get these dogs adopted, then, it would be like us working together. So they took in some dogs from us, which every one of them has been attended to and adopted or is currently up for adoption. I think they have just 4 left. And then North Bay came in a couple weeks later because they weren't answering calls for a long time, right? Like they weren't unreachable. And Sonoma County Animal Services, Beth, she brought me 5 bags of, 50-pound bags of dog food. She sent over cleaner and towels and gloves and a protection outfit to clean, because so North Bay, in the process of all of this before the hearing, they actually went to VCA Animal Hospital because when they had asked me if they were getting if they were being seen by a vet, and I was like, yeah, I have an account at VCA Animal Hospital right around the corner from my house. I have an account there. I make sure that there's always money on it. So that way I can take them over there. I had gotten some of the dogs' rabies and vaccinations there. They actually went to VC Animal Hospital and told them that there was an investigation and to not provide me veterinary care until they gave them the green light. VCA Animal Hospital refused to give me the money that was on my account so I could take the puppy that I had brought in on an emergency that was struggling to breathe. because they said, oh, we can't do nothing with your account. And now all of a sudden the store is being changed. They're acting like they don't understand exactly what I'm asking for, all this stuff. Because when I shared that at the administrative hearing, they were just like, oh, what? And North Bay Animal Services denied it. So I'm taking the steps needed to get that subpoenaed because it's not right. Because that puppy ended up dying. You know, I called. So when they told me that, I went over to the North Animal Services satellite office, and the animal control officer like just was talking, got on the phone and was talking to, I'm assuming, Mark, and told me that they couldn't help, and I had to go back to VC Animalsville, and I was like, it's the puppy was in my arms, like struggling to breathe, and he just handed me a business card. So I called Beth and at the Sonoma County Animal Services and was like, "Did you do this?" And she was like, "No." And I said, "Well, one of your officers must have done it." And she was like, "That goes against our mission, and it's like completely against our values, our morals." And I was like, "Well, this is what they're saying, and this puppy's dying. I don't know what else to do." And so she told me to go ahead and bring the puppy in, and that I would have to surrender them because they're not a public vet, but that they could treat their own animals. And so I did. I took the puppy over to her. I signed over the paper. And she was out there waiting for me. She grabbed the puppy. She took it right to the back. The veterinarian was back there with it. And the puppy died on the table. That could have been prevented. But that was a result of some really scandalous freaking intentional attempts to take down a very small organization that's just trying to help. Beth has always been very kind to me. She's very honest, whether it's something that I want to hear or not. You know, she checks in with me. She provided me updates with the dogs. She let me know, you know, she was honest with me when some of the dogs were transferred to Rohnert Park. And I appreciate that. Because if nothing else, be honest. And she's always been that. You know, then a dog came from San Bernardino that had a bite history who ended up biting one of our fosters. The dog ended up getting picked up by animal control, and Beth was honest with me about having to put that mother down. They allowed her to wean her puppies, but she was just too dangerous. I mean, even the flight attendant that brought her, you know, can attest to, she was more than what anybody could have even imagined. And so if that happened, I can say that it's because it was the best option for her. But all the puppies are, you know, are currently up for adoption. They've been vaccinated, you know, spayed and neutered, all that good stuff. And so then with the dogs that North Bay finally decided to struggle behind and take, I found out that they never had any intention on helping those animals because all they did was immediately send them right back to the shelters that they came from, which unfortunately, most of them took an early trip across the Rainbow Bridge because of a lack of space, you know, so Nick, if you watched my videos, then you know that Nick is a very special boy to me. He's a big goofball, and you know, instantly we bonded the moment that he came to me. He came to me with Daisy and their puppies, 2 that passed away and 2 that have grown up, or are growing up, and little knuckleheads. And at the time I told North Bay, you know, he's food reactive. He has to eat in a kennel by himself, but he's a great dog. And they were like, "Oh, well, you know that we don't kill, Christina. We're gonna do everything that we can do." And oh yeah, we can work with him, and yeah, blah blah, like all these, knowing damn well at that time that they had no intention on doing that. Because immediately after that, when my cousin had found out that freaking what had happened, she was like, "No, we got to get them back. We got to get Nick back. I'll take Nick." And so she reached out to North Animal Services and was like, "Look, dude, like I want to adopt him. I was adopting him. I was going to adopt him because she was." And she was like, and they were like, "Well, he's in a dangerous dog. We can't adopt him out." That's not at all what I said. I said that he needs to eat by himself. There are plenty of dogs that are food reactive that are not aggressive, and Nick is far from aggressive. He's big, and he looks mean, but he's not mean. He's the sweetest goofball in the world, but he is protective of me. I don't know if he's ever been like that with anybody else. I didn't get a chance to ask the ladies at the Modesto shelter, but he sleeps with his body draped over mine. And anytime that somebody comes up to me or reaches out to me, he does bark and come in between us, but he doesn't bite. So I was watching them on their page, and I was, hoping that they were going to get adopted. And I watched them on the candidate email move up the list. And, something in my heart just told me, like, you got to do something. So I reached out to the shelter, and they were all for sending them back to me. And then North Bay put a block on it. Luckily, so they weren't able to give them back or to transfer them back to me. So me and my partner drove down there. We borrowed one of our volunteers and one of my good friends' vehicle. We just got on the road. We had like a quarter tank of gas and $20 to our name, and we were just like, where there's a will, there's a way, and we're gonna make this happen. I'm gonna either, you know, I'm gonna fail trying instead of just sitting back. We made it there with the, just with the support of our supporters and family and friends. Thank you so much, because when we did a live stream there, and people were like, they sent in donations for us, and we put it all in the tank. And my brother actually came through with flying colors, and friggin' my mom. And so we get to the shelter, and at that point we still don't really know what's going on, because all I knew at that time is that, that's not what I wanted to look like, was that I had to get there and I needed to talk to them. I needed to see them and make sure that they were alive and try to talk to them. I didn't have the money to cover the adoption fee. So I get to the shelter, and, thankfully they're just like, what happened? How did they come to be with us again? And I was just honest with them. I said, we're experiencing, some, a dry period in fosters. The deformation from the shelters doesn't help. Doesn't make people, want to partner or foster with us. And they said that I had too many dogs, and that they were going to help rehome them. I never intended for them to come back here, because I didn't. I would never have sent them if I knew that they were going to be sent back to the shelters that they came from. I had expected North Bay, since they were the ones that were like driving that fucking train, to in fact take care of them and rehome them, like Sonoma County Animal Services did. And we're not even in their jurisdiction. Like, they went the extra like 10 miles out of the goodness of in their hearts, because it was the right thing to do. They didn't have to. They very well could have just turned away and said, "You're not our problem. We can't deal with it, or we won't deal with it." But they didn't. And to this day, I can still call that shelter and ask for help. And if they're able to, they will help me, or help the animals. And then this is the shelter that has one city out of the whole county. North Bay gets contracts for all the other cities, but they are unable to do this. They can buy new vehicles that they have no business doing. Why does an animal control officer need an all black SUV? 2025. We're not even going to go there. So anyway, I don't know exactly what it was that made the Modesto shelter be willing to take a chance, but I'm grateful that they did. So we went up to adopt them, and then they said that they could only do one adoption per household, but they made an exception. And we got to bring home, the boys, and when we first got there, I was walking through the facility. It's a beautiful facility, and I was looking for them, and I found Icy, who was hovered in a corner, just trembling. His whole body was just shaking. And we were like, "I see you," and he was scared, so he ran to the other side of the kennel, and he was just like just like trembling. And I was like, "I'll be back." My partner is in love with Icy, so he stayed there and was just talking to him, and I just took off running, because I was like, "Okay, I don't see the others." Then a couple rooms later, I came into Icy's mom, and I was like, "Oh, Icky, she looked great." I was like, "Hold on." So I kept going, and I couldn't find Nick, and my heart started pounding, and I started sweating, and I started shaking, and I was like, "Where is he? Where is he? Where is he?" I got to the last few doors that were dogs, and I didn't find him. And then I found a hall that was of like empty kennels, and I just started bawling, because I was like, "I'm too late. I'm too late." Then I went out into the hallway and I saw that there was another door. So I went in there, and the fourth kennel down, there my boy was. And it just like he recognized me, and I freaking missed him, and he missed me. And I can't even explain to you like what that feeling was like, but I was like, I found him, and friggin', and so that drew attention of a volunteer, and she came to talk to me, and she was like, like what happened, and I explained to her, and I was honest with her, and she took me to the other lady's office, and I was like, look, I'm trying my best. My intention is always to get these animals. Hi, hi, lovers. This is my guy. This is my guy. Oh, yeah. Okay, okay. Okay, big boy. Okay. I'm in the middle of a video. Oh, I love you too. Oh, I love you too. Oh, I love you too. Oh, okay. I love you too. Crazy guy. Um, and I was like, I just, I want to do whatever I can do to help make sure that they leave the shelter alive. And so we did that. And then they were, and luckily we did, because we learned that they were on the calendar for euthanasia at the end of that day. And I don't know what it was, exactly what it was, but I just was like, I have to get there. Like something inside my stomach was like, we have to get there. And my partner friggin', knuckled up and friggin' went with me. We jumped on the road around like 11ish, 10ish, 11ish, and we went, and friggin', and then the the county shelter had reached out, was like, oh, I heard you had Nick back, and I was like, well, yeah, I do, but that boy, and then he's actually being fostered by a friend of mine, who's at work right now, so he does come and hang out with me, and like I told Chandra, because she was like, well, you said that you had somewhere to put him, and I was like, well, he does have somebody, but he comes with me a lot, because one, we're bonded, and two, in order to be able to do fostering or whatever, they need help. They can't, and so we help them in any way we can, and that includes most, usually, boarding them throughout the day. So, you know it might not be the traditional way that it's ran, but that's okay, because obviously we've been doing it for how long we've been doing it your guys' way, and how slow as it has the process to success been. We opened, and no, we opened our, hey, we opened our doors. We just celebrated our, excuse me, inside barks. We just celebrated our 1 year anniversary, and the only animals that have ever died in our care are neonates that had fading puppy syndrome, which like either right at birth, or like one puppy, it was like 2 weeks, it was a couple weeks after. We have never had a dog die as far as being killed or sent off to another organization to be killed, except for the animals that were taken by North Bay, and then they transferred them to the shelters, knowing damn well that they were going to be euthanized because the shelters were at critical overcapacity. It's disgusting, and it's heartbreaking, and I'm keeping up to date, because finally, everybody had so much to say about how, like, basically what I was saying was all this rubbish. But apparently it was enough to get the grand jury interested in it, and the civil grand jury did their own investigation, and oddly enough, confirmed everything that I said. Everything. And then some. And even went as far as, because so basically, after I wasn't able to get any help with, issues with the animals directly, then I started digging into other areas of it and was like, what? Why are the cities contracting with this shelter who's not licensed, who has no veterinary premise license, which legally, by federal law, not your town ordinances, because that is not law. That is, an ordinance is not law, and it does not triumph state law, and state law does not triumph federal law. So why is this shelter that is violating federal laws being given large sums of taxpayer money to do with what they want? Hey, 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 hey. No. Put him in his crate for timeout, please. And no, no, no. Please.
Come on, Nick. Come on.
And so, and I was like, I got a lot of records and I provided it to this amazing blog. I don't know who the authors are, but I know that they are the blog is very well organized and it has a lot of information that I have helped put out there. And still nobody was doing anything about it. So all these cities that are claiming to not know about all this stuff, they're lying flat out, because I have the emails that prove that I personally, in my investigation, reached out to every single city that the North Bay Animal Services contracted with to provide them with that information. And some of them were like, oh, they were so appalled and blah, blah, like Sebastopol. Others, some have retracted their contracts, but the rest of them continue to let it go by. Why? Because it was benefiting them. Cost effectiveness means that they're making money off of it, which is not okay. The town of Windsor needing to desperately, find ways to generate revenue shouldn't be made by harassing people and putting animals in harm's way and fining people $34,000 for having more than 4 dogs and demanding that they give them to a shelter who is obviously incapable of providing the care that they need. So it's either put those dogs in a dangerous situation in an organization where they are getting sick, where they are being sent off to die, where they are being starved, where they are being not poisoned, but I mean pretty much because they have an outbreak all the time of kennel cough. So they're going there fine and they're getting sick there. That's bullshit. What kind of government are we allowing to be in control? And I really hope that people think about this, and not just for me, not my story, but all the stories. And if not for the humans, if you can't find it in your heart to have compassion for the humans because we are not from the same walk of life, then what about for the animals? The innocent animals that are ultimately the ones that suffer at the hands of North Bay Animal Services. The animals that are killed way before their time. Places like Best Friends and all that vouch for these shelters, that allegedly believe that every pet deserves a loving home. That's great. Those are good words, but what action have you done that proves that you actually fight for that mission? Because things like taking up, like biting the bullet and saying, you know what, if you want to fine me, fine. I can't pay that because I don't have no money, because I'm not like you and I'm not laundering money and I'm not over here getting all this kind of funding. I pay a lot of my rescue expenses, all of them, out of my own pocket, from my Social Security, from odd jobs, from recycling. We have videos of us recycling to make freaking money for dog food. Like, that is fighting for the cause that you believe in. And I'm not saying that I have all the answers, because I don't. I'm learning as I go along. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and to this day, I'm learning as I go along. I'm always open to getting advice from organizations that are more established. The only problem is that the ones in this county are so money hungry and greedy that they shut new organizations out. If you're not in the in circle, then they do everything in their power to kind of cast you out. And so that takes me back onto, these kennel license. So in order to have a kennel license, you have to have a facility, right? Or you can have, if it's at a home, you have to have a pet fancier license. Well, a pet fancier license means that you do selective breeding, which is against being a rescue. And you're only allowed to give away or sell 2 litters a year, which Dogwood and Remap, according to their websites, have done well over 200 litters. How is that okay? That's not a puppy mill? I mean, but it's okay, right? Because they have connections on the inner circle. No, it's not all right. Animal welfare shouldn't be a business, and it shouldn't be in the hands of our government. It should be in the hands of the people. And in all honesty, the pet overpopulation is man-created because town ordinances that limit the number of pets that a household can have, not even a person, that each home can have. So if you have a home with multi-families in it, oh well. Do you realize how many animals are being sent off to early deaths because of this? And it doesn't bother you? Best Friends, I have submitted numerous bills to try to get, passed. And anytime that it's about changing town ordinances, it gets rejected. Anytime it's about holding shelters accountable, it gets rejected. That's funny. Then I stopped being a volunteer with them because I started talking about that. Well, you know what? Fine. If I'm going to lose that spot because of being honest and actually fighting for the mission that you claim to, I'll do it any day. And I'm proud of that. Because you know what? To be honest with you, ultimately, the only reason why I ever got involved with you was because I wanted to know what the hell you were about. And I had done research on you and had realized that, you started off as the First Process Church, same EIN and everything. And you can call it what you want, but I've in the FBI files, I have those records, and you can get them too if you submit a Freedom of Information Act, and if you just go to the FBI website and go to their vault, you would see for yourself the police reports and the investigative reports upon Best Friends Animal Society and how they have been found, guilty before they became the Best Friends Animal Society of sacrificing animals. This First Process Church was a satanic church, or is a satanic church. Charles Manson went there. Oddly enough, you would think that with it being so intelligent that your logos and symbols would be a little different, I mean, at least try to hide it, but no. And that's all in the FBI vault. You can see for yourself. You don't have to listen to me, because to you, I'm a nobody. You don't know me. And I don't ever want people to just take my word for it. I want you to do your own research. I want you to ask questions, to ask for public records, to examine the public records, to, compare the reports and numbers. Do the calculations. Do it yourself, so that way you know that what I'm saying is true. Not just because I say it. I never want that. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking you guys to wake up and get smart and stop being so quick to blindly follow an organization that is leading thousands of animals to their death unnecessarily. In doing so, violating federal laws and policies and acts that were in place to protect these animals, like the Hayden's Act. With that, I'm going to close for now. Thanks, guys.